Hello there! Here I show you the new and revised version of my decentralized power distribution, the Central Power Hub 2.0. The central electrical circuit that ensures the power supply from power sources has become slimmer. We save components and can therefore build more battery chambers at the same time. The limit rises from 12 to an incredible 27. The CPH is now almost a completely normal niche core again. Only the outputs to main power and battery charging are different. And secondly, for all those who need it, I have added the battery check mechanism from the BCN to the individual battery chambers. Whether you use it or not is up to you. It entirely depends on your preference. Turrets and many other devices in Rust require electricity. It is generated from power sources. To balance out fluctuations due to weather or time of day, you put a battery in between that serves as a backup. The problem? Batteries only charge at 80% of the incoming power. Meaning, to get a constant 100 power through a large battery and have the battery always full, we need on average 126 power from power sources. So 26 Rust watts are consumed, which we could use elsewhere. The more batteries we use, the higher this value logically becomes. This can be solved with the universally popular niche core. It ensures that incoming power supplies all our end devices and uses excess power to charge our batteries. Only when the power falls below our set consumption level do the batteries take over until the input has recovered. The niche core is a masterpiece but has one weakness. If a battery is destroyed, the niche core still switches to backup power when incoming power is lower than our set value. Using the example of only one battery, it quickly becomes clear where the problem lies. We try to charge our no longer existing battery and get nothing on the backup line. In the worst case, either everything is off now or more than necessary. The BCN solves this problem. Here one Rust watt is used to check whether the backup power is greater or smaller than what is coming in, and based on this it switches. This means the always higher power source is used, regardless of whether it is sufficient to power our end devices or not. This makes the BCN extremely efficient. Depending on preference and use case, this is a great electrical circuit. Both the niche core and the BCN are central electrical circuits. They supply the base from a single point. Both circuits therefore have a weak point, a so-called single point of failure. If you destroy this, all end devices are affected. You can address this by simply building several circuits to minimize the risk. If you connect multiple power sources or batteries together, you can achieve higher values than just 100 Rust watts. The problem with batteries, however, is that they are equally stressed by the end devices. So if you power 2 turrets with electricity from 16 connected batteries, then all 16 batteries are evenly stressed with 20 Rust watts. That is not ideal and, in my opinion, eats up the efficiency bonus of the BCN. Because when the batteries take over as backup, they are usually discharged at maximum rate, meaning 100 Rust watts. The bigger the base gets, the trickier the job of an electrician in Rust becomes. But this is where the fun really starts for us. They say there are many paths to Rome, and that absolutely applies here too. Personally, I have chosen a third way, and it has worked wonderfully for years. The CPH is actually just a niche core, but it redirects all power into decentralized battery chambers. Each of these battery chambers has its own circuit and is therefore independent of the central power distributor. Each chamber can supply devices with 100 or 99 Rust watts, depending on whether a battery check is built in or not. More about that later. The central part therefore only ensures that all power sources are bundled and distributed to the base. If it is destroyed, each chamber continues to function until the battery is empty. If individual chambers are destroyed, all others continue to run. I have expanded the CPH with a central kill switch. With this switch, certain or all parts of the base can be turned off. It is optional and can be built so that it is triggered manually or automatically switches everything back on after time has passed. Additionally, or alternatively, of course, you can also place individual switches in the individual chambers. In my experience, however, a central switch is easier for the team. In the CPH, the battery chambers are usually also the place where the components for end devices are located. If a battery is destroyed, everything connected here is affected. That is also the reason why we do not necessarily need a battery check like the BCN. Only a small part of the base is affected, and the larger the base, the less significant it becomes. The knee core is therefore not obsolete in this case, quite the opposite. The more you scale up, the more efficient it becomes. For fans of absolute fail safety, however, I have still added an optional battery check mechanism per chamber. This can be added at any time, but reduces efficiency because we sacrifice one rust watt per chamber. But if you hide the components, meaning you don't place them directly next to the battery, then the power supply of your end devices is still ensured even if the battery is found and destroyed. So depending on the use case, it may be worthwhile. With the CPH, a little more effort comes into play because you must route 2 to 3 cables simultaneously into the individual chambers. But this can easily be solved by simply carrying 2 to 3 wire tools. This way you only have to walk one time to the battery. Let's build the CPH. First we start with the components for the knee core. I have colored the cables according to their function. Purple, main power, green, battery charging, blue, kill switch. All power sources arrive bundled here at this memory cell. It is intended for the kill switch. The inverted output goes into the first knee core branch. At this branch we set our power value. Per battery chamber, using large batteries, that is 100 rust watts each. So if we start with one battery chamber, that's 100. With 27 battery chambers, that's 2700 rust watts. The branch out goes into the next memory cell. The main power cable goes via the output into the first splitter. From this splitter, it then goes into the individual battery chambers.
Now the green battery charging cable.
The inverted output of the second memory cell goes into an OR switch. This OR switch goes into another OR switch, and this one then into our second splitter for the battery charging of the battery chambers. The output of the kill switch memory cell at the very beginning also goes into one of the inputs of the OR switches. And then there is the power out of our knee core branch number 2. That completes battery charging. Now to the mechanism that detects whether we use main power or exclusively battery charging. The last connected branch number 2 supplies our set input of the memory cell from the knee core with 1 rust watt. So if there is power here, then the memory cell switches to main power, and all remaining power goes into battery charging. For the memory cell to switch back when there is no power on set, we need a reset. For this purpose, we connect a small battery via a branch with a branch out of 1 rust watt to the reset of the memory cell. Because connections on electrical components are logical connections, we do not need to actively charge the battery. It is enough if it has some capacity. If we only want to turn off 10 chambers with a kill switch, a small battery is enough. If it's more, then you should use 2 to 3 connected small ones or a medium battery. That's it already. Easy, fast, efficient. The central kill switch is optional. We route power from the battery just provided from the power out of the branch into the first kill switch branch. The power out goes through a timer into another branch. From this branch, 2 rust watts go into a splitter. Splitter output 1 supplies the set input of our kill switch memory cell. Splitter output 2 goes into the reset. The power out of the branch goes into the third splitter to the battery chambers. The branch out of the first branch goes with 2 rust watts through a smart switch into another branch. This branch out triggers the timer with 1 rust watt. The power out resets the smart switch. This turns the smart switch into a smart trigger and does not need to be reset manually. Once activated, it shuts everything off for a predefined period of time. I usually set the timer to 120 seconds. That's enough for people to authenticate at turrets. Depending on the size of the base and the walking distances, this may need to be increased. Alternatively, you can omit the timer and branches and connect the battery via the smart switch directly with the following branch. Then you must not forget to turn the turrets back on manually. Now the battery chambers. Here we have 2 circuits to choose from, namely with or without a battery check mechanism. Without the battery check, it is very simple. We only need 1 battery, 1 OR switch and 1 blocker. Optionally, we also have for each battery chamber, additionally or alternatively to the central kill switch, a smart switch before or between our end devices, and can thus individually turn off parts of the base. Main power, purple, goes to the left input of the OR switch. Battery charging, green, goes directly into the battery, and kill switch, blue, goes into the block pass-through on the blocker. I would now like to demonstrate what happens when the incoming power is too low, meaning everything goes into battery charging and the battery is destroyed but the components remain. If the incoming power in our circuit is above the set threshold, everything continues to run. But if the power is too low, then this chamber without a battery turns off. When the input recovers above our threshold, everything works again. This is the previously mentioned flaw of the pure Ni core. Since I can only fix the single point of failure of a BCN by building several BCNs and would have to sacrifice 1 rust watt per BCN, I can also do this optionally per battery chamber in the CPH. I decide myself which chamber I equip with the battery check or not and when I do it. Here then is the built-in battery check per chamber. We now need significantly more components. In addition to OR switch and blocker, another OR switch and blocker, 2 branches, a memory cell, and a small battery with some capacity so that we do not have to waste another rust watt. We want to achieve that incoming power charges the battery only if it is actually present. Otherwise, the power should be available to our end devices. Our main power cable, purple, goes again into the OR switch as before. The blue kill switch cable also goes again into the blocker. What changes is the wiring of the battery. The green battery charging cable from the CPH goes into the memory cell. The inverted output charges the battery. The output goes into the new OR switch. The battery out goes into a branch. The branch out also goes into the OR switch and is set to 99 rust watts. The remaining rust watt goes via the power out of the branch into the block pass-through on the new blocker. A small battery supplies a second branch with power. Here at least 1 rust watt goes into the reset. The rest goes via the blocker into the set input of the memory cell. If the battery is present, it blocks the set input of the memory cell. Looks more complicated than it is. The only disadvantage here is the number of components and the 1 rust watt we lose. If you don't mind that, then it is better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. And here I also demonstrate again what happens when we fall below our threshold and the battery is destroyed but the components remain. In this case, the turret briefly turns off and then turns back on. In case of an attack, this is the least of your problems anyway. You can build the CPH right from the start. If you then want to scale up as the base gets bigger, you must of course distribute the available power per line to more splitters. With 1 to 3 batteries, you only need 1 splitter per cable line. Afterwards, you continue in the following steps: 4, 6, 8, 9, 12, 18, 27 battery chambers, each with main power, battery charging and kill switch cable. So that you do not run into problems with the maximum depth of components with this amount of battery chambers, you must pay attention to the correct tree structure and wiring. Up to 12, even up to 18 battery chambers, there should hardly be problems. but at 27 you come dangerously close to the depth limit. So pay attention to your wiring. After long neglect from me, the CPH has finally arrived in the present and now accounts for current game mechanics. It is slimmer, easy to build, and scalable up to 27 battery chambers. It optionally incorporates a battery check per chamber and has a practical central kill switch. If the central power distributor is destroyed, that doesn't matter at first. Raiders will break their teeth because they must destroy multiple points, not just one, to really disable all turrets. And that gives us defenders the most precious commodity in Rust: time. That does not mean a BCN or other types of power distribution are obsolete or worse. It also always depends on your playstyle, the base, or your team. What matters is that you find a system that works for you. And maybe I can offer someone an option with this. Because in the end, it is always good to have options. Until then, stay fresh. Bye.